What if I told you that the very moment humanity gained intelligence was also the moment we were doomed to die young? Picture this. You're standing on the African plains 2.4 million years ago, watching a small, trembling figure strike two stones together. That simple act, that spark of genius, should have been humanity's triumph. Instead, it became a curse. Because the species that first learned to think, to create, to imagine a better tomorrow couldn't survive long enough to see it. If this story captivates you as much as it does me, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. This is the story of Homo habilis, the shortest lived species in the entire human family tree. And their tragedy reveals something profound about what it truly means to be human. Over 2 million years ago, as the sun rose over East Africa's Great Rift Valley, something unprecedented was happening. A creature, barely taller than a modern 10-year-old child, was doing something no animal had ever done before. They were thinking. Standing just 1.3 meters tall and weighing a mere 30-40 kilograms, Homo habilis wouldn't have impressed you with their size. Their brain, at 600-700 cubic centimeters, was half the size of yours. But inside that compact skull, something revolutionary was stirring: intentional thought. When archaeologists first discovered their remains in Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge, they found something that changed everything we understood about human origins. Scattered around the fossilized bones were hundreds of deliberately broken stones, the Oldowan tools, crude, rough-edged flakes that barely qualified as weapons. But they represented something earth-shattering: choice. For the first time in Earth's 4.5 billion-year history, a creature looked at nature and said, "I can change this." They learned to select specific stones, strike them at precise angles, and create sharp edges for cutting meat and breaking bones. It sounds simple, almost primitive, but this was the genesis of all human technology. Every smartphone, every spacecraft, every medical instrument traces its lineage back to those trembling hands on the African savanna, turning stones into tools. Yet, here's the cruel irony. The very intelligence that should have saved them couldn't protect them from what was coming. Welcome to hell. The Pleistocene killing fields the world Homo habilis inherited wasn't just dangerous. It was specifically designed to kill creatures exactly like them. The early Pleistocene epoch was a planetary nightmare. Temperatures swung wildly between scorching 40-degree days and near-freezing nights. Months-long droughts cracked the earth into dust, only to be followed by violent floods that swept away entire groups. The grasslands that had once teemed with life were transforming into semi-deserts of fractured, hostile terrain. But the climate was only the opening act of this horror show. The real terror came at dusk. As the golden African sun dipped below the horizon, the killing began. Imagine trying to sleep while knowing that stalking through the darkness around you were creatures specifically evolved to end your existence. Panthera leo atrox, prehistoric lions twice the size of modern ones, with jaws powerful enough to crush a buffalo skull. Smilodon, saber-toothed cats sporting 20-centimeter fangs that could pierce through bone like butter. And Pachyrhina brevirostris, giant hyenas with bite forces that made modern crocodiles look weak. In this ecosystem, Homo habilis occupied the least enviable position imaginable. They were prey, pure, helpless prey. Their top running speed? A pathetic 10-12 kilometers per hour. Slower than nearly every predator on the plains, slower than their food sources, slower than death itself. So they didn't run, they hid. During daylight, they moved in agonizing silence, eyes constantly scanning for movement in the grass. a sudden wind shift, the abrupt silence of birds, the rustle of leaves. Any of these could mean death was seconds away. When night fell, they huddled in caves and rocky crevices, listening to the roars echoing across the plains, reminders that they existed only at nature's mercy. Perhaps this is where humans first learned what fear truly meant. Not the abstract worry of modern life, but visceral, primal terror, the knowledge that darkness equaled death. The scavenger's bargain, living on leftovers. Here's a detail that makes Homo habilis even more tragic. They weren't even hunting the meat they ate. Fossilized bones found at Olduvai Gorge tell a heartbreaking story. Stone tool cut marks appear above predator tooth marks. Think about what that means. The lions ate first. The hyenas took their share. The vultures picked at what remained. And then, only then, did Homo habilis creep in, nervously glancing over their shoulders to scrape up whatever scraps hadn't already rotted in the African heat. They were the cleanup crew of the Pleistocene, bottom feeders in a food chain that had no mercy for the weak. Their strategy was born of desperate calculation. Watch the predators from a distance, read their tracks, learn their patterns, wait for them to leave. Then move in fast, smash the bones with stones, extract the marrow, and flee before something bigger arrived to reclaim the carcass. The marrow, that precious, fatty substance inside bones, often meant the difference between survival and starvation during the brutal dry season. It was high in protein and calories, and it was frequently the only thing keeping Homo habilis groups alive. Was it dignified? No. Was it impressive? Hardly. But it was intelligent. Because within this humiliating survival strategy lay something profound. Homo habilis was learning to observe, to predict, to plan. They were using their minds to compensate for their weak bodies. They were turning vulnerability into opportunity through the only weapon they possessed: thought. But thought alone couldn't save them from what was coming. The biology of tragedy. Why 12 years was their ceiling? When anthropologists study Homo habilis remains, one statistic screams from the fossil record: their average lifespan was just 12-14 years. A rare few made it to 20. Most died as children. Why? The answer is a cascade of interconnected failures: biological, environmental, and evolutionary. First, their bodies betrayed them. Bones too light to withstand impact. Muscles too small for sustained running or fighting. Legs too short for long-distance travel. Skulls so thin that a single blow could prove fatal. Even their teeth, humanity's most basic survival tool, were inadequate for tearing tough meat or crushing hard plant material. They evolved not to dominate, but to subsist. And subsistence is a brutal way to live. Second, the environment showed no mercy. The Pleistocene was an age of extremes. When water sources dried up, prey migrated, and Homo habilis followed, struggling to keep pace, watching their young die from dehydration along the way. When the rains came, floods drowned those too weak to climb. Without any understanding of medicine, a simple infected cut from a stone tool or an insect bite could, and often did, become a death sentence. Third, they were everyone's meal. Fossilized Homo habilis bones frequently bear the unmistakable tooth marks of predators. They were hunted systematically by saber-toothed cats and giant hyenas. When their small groups moved across open plains, they were visible, vulnerable, and virtually defenseless. Armed with nothing but rocks and terrified cries, they stood almost no chance against the apex predators of their time. Fourth, and perhaps most heartbreaking, their minds hadn't evolved far enough to save them. Yes, they could make tools, But they couldn't plan beyond the immediate moment. They had no concept of coordinated hunting, no mastery of fire, no way to store food for tomorrow. Every action was reactive. Eat when you see food, run when you see danger. There was no tomorrow in their world, only an endless, exhausting right now. And when you cannot imagine the future, you cannot survive long in the present. A day in the life, walking with the doomed. Let me take you back 2 million years. The sun rises over the East African plains, painting the shrubs in gold. A small group of Homo habilis, 15 individuals, stirs awake in their rocky shelter. They count themselves. 15 yesterday, 14 today. One juvenile is missing. The distant cackle of hyenas last night told them everything they needed to know. No one mourns. There's no time. Survival doesn't pause for grief. Breakfast is roots and a handful of shriveled berries. The stronger ones use stones to pry roots from the hardened earth. The food is divided quickly, silently. Eyes constantly dart toward the horizon. In the distance, a herd of antelope moves north. They know what this means: water. But following the herd means entering the hunting grounds of the saber-toothed cats. One ambush could end them all, so they choose the long way, farther but safer. Survival for Homo habilis is an endless series of terrible choices. By midday, the temperature soars past 40 degrees. The ground radiates heat like burning coals. Then they smell it: blood. An antelope carcass, recently killed, meat still attached. Their stomachs scream for it, but fresh lion tracks circle the body. The hunter is close. Still, hunger overrides fear. One male edges forward, stone in hand, and quickly slices off a strip of flesh. The sound of stone scraping bone echoes too loud in the stillness. Then, a roar. The lion has returned. Instantly, the group explodes into flight. No fighting, no defiance, just pure, desperate running toward the rocks where the predator might not follow. The sounds of panting, feet pounding earth, children crying. This is the soundtrack of Homo habilis. By late afternoon, they found a ravine with a trickle of water and some bushes. This will be tonight's shelter. A pregnant female sits, carefully striking 2 stones together, not to make fire, which they cannot yet create, but to sharpen an edge for cutting a tough root. She shares the pieces with the group. This simple act, this sharing, is the earliest seed of humanity. As darkness descends, they huddle together. They have no language, only eyes and gestures. One male stands guard at the cave entrance, gripping a stone, their only weapon against the night. Sometimes, on quiet nights, they see something strange in the distance. Fire, the result of lightning striking a tree. They don't understand it, but they've noticed that the glow keeps predators away. A few curious ones approach the warm ashes, trembling, reaching out tentatively. They don't yet know how to create fire, but they've begun to desire it, and desire is the mother of invention. The torch passes when evolution rolled the dice again. For over 500,000 years, Homo habilis clung to existence. Then, around 1.8 million years ago, something changed. From the last surviving groups of Homo habilis, a new species emerged: Homo erectus. The difference was staggering. Homo erectus stood 1.7 meters tall, weighed 70 kilograms, possessed skulls measuring 900 cubic centimeters. They had long legs built for endurance travel and balanced frames that could cover vast distances. But the real revolution wasn't physical. It was fire. Homo erectus achieved what Homo habilis never could. They learned to create and control flame. No longer did they fear the night. No longer did they depend on random lightning strikes. The first human-made fire didn't just warm bodies, it illuminated minds. They hunted in organized groups, crafted sharper tools, divided roles within communities. Each individual was no longer alone. They acted for one another. From that moment, Homo erectus became the first humans to truly conquer nature. Occasionally, the two species may have crossed paths. Imagine it. Homo erectus standing tall, eyes steady and confident. Homo habilis, small and stooped, watching timidly from the rocks. Perhaps they didn't understand each other, but nature did, because in evolution's ruthless logic, there's no room for two types of humanity, weak and strong, to coexist forever. Homo erectus migrated, carrying fire and knowledge, spreading across Africa, Asia, and Europe. Meanwhile, Homo habilis faded, not in a single catastrophe, but in quiet, steady decline, swallowed by time, hunger, and competition. There was no war, no enemy, only the silent hand of natural selection erasing what could no longer adapt. Only shattered stone fragments buried in Africa's red soil, silent proof they once existed. But those fragments contain something sacred, the very first idea of creation. Before Homo habilis, no creature on Earth had ever made something to serve itself. They looked at a stone and saw not what it was, but what it could become. From that moment, humanity ceased being a passive part of nature. This was the birth of tool intelligence, one of the defining traits that would make humans the planet's dominant species. From those crude stone flakes came wooden spears, bronze blades. In every human invention, from the simplest pen to the most complex microchip, lingers the spirit of Homo habilis, the first beings who dared to imagine a tool. But their true legacy isn't material. Homo habilis also taught us how to care. They were the first to tend to the wounded, share scarce meat with their young, and huddle together for warmth and safety. These simple acts were the earliest sparks of compassion, the first flickers of what we call humanity. From them, we learn the meaning of connection. And it was that bond, fragile yet unbreakable, that allowed humankind to survive every extinction, every ice age, every war, and ultimately evolve into us. The trembling torch. Some creatures are born to dominate. Others are born to pass the torch. Homo habilis, that fragile, brilliant, tragic species, was the first to hold that torch in their trembling hands. And that spark, however small, was enough to illuminate the entire path of human evolution. In the night winds of ancient Africa, perhaps the breath of Homo habilis still echoes somewhere, the sound of the first beings who dared to hope amid the shadows. They didn't know they would vanish, yet they kept gathering stones, scraping meat from bones, just to live one more day. And that one more day was enough to begin the millions of years that followed. The next time you pick up a tool, any tool, remember them. Remember the small, frightened creatures who looked at their hands and wondered, what more can we do? That question was the beginning of intelligence, and the greatest gift they ever gave to those of us who came after.